Well, Jake Barber said that he could actually summon this egg ship with his mind.
Yeah, it's not quite that simple. It's, as you know, in 1990, I started the whole CE5 contact initiative using consciousness interfacing with extraterrestrial sensors. So what people don't realize, and they don't think about it, is that you're not going to be able to communicate with a radio frequency like your phone across the vastness of space, because it's at the speed of light, which is the speed of a radio frequency, to communicate to the Andromeda galaxy, which is 2.5 million light years from here. It'd take you 2.5 million years to get that signal there, and another 2.5 million years for the person to answer your call.
Right.
Not going to happen. So when you're dealing with, this is where you get into strange stuff, right? And the CIA people call it WSFM, stands for Weird Science and Frickin' Magic. That's literally what they call it. And my uncle's old company, I met an engineer who worked on this weird stuff, and he said, we just call it PFM, pure fucking magic. Excuse my language, but I mean, that's what they call it. And they're really high-end engineers in aerospace. So those technologies are the heart of one of the central things of the secrecy. Because I accidentally stumbled across that when I was 18, when I had a contact experience, and realized that those communication systems and those civilizations are interfacing with not just random thought and consciousness, but in a state of more expanded awareness and coherent thought, like a laser, like your thoughts are boom. They pick up on that at the speed of thought, which is instantaneous. Because the conscious field is actually omnipresent. It's the ultimate quantum-entangled field, meaning that every point in space and time is integrated into it, and there's no latency in time. Instant.
So you're saying thought is faster than light?
Oh, yeah. It's instantaneous.
Got it.
And what is a quanta of thought? Can that be quantified? Yes, it has been, and it is. So the covert programs mirrored what we were doing for peaceful contact into a program they call P3, psionic operators, where they would find people and put them through a program training them so that they could become basically biological machines. And it was brutal. Most of them died, ended up in comas. But the ones that survived became adept at being able to do that, but for a hostile reason. They weren't doing it. The CE5 contact, I mean, anyone can do it. You can get the app, CE5 Contact. The app is on all the stores. You can learn to do this, and it's for making peaceful contact. The aerospace industry and intelligence community said, wow, let's take this and turn it into a weapon system. So what they did was train people to do that with pretty good reliability, lock on to an extraterrestrial, say, guidance system, kind of slip in there, move it into range and hit it with an electromagnetic pulse weapon, knock it out of the sky. Opposite of what our purpose is. My purpose is to make peaceful contact and stop all that fighting. But the intelligence community, realized this a long time ago. I understand in the 50s, they realized that the technologies related to extraterrestrial craft and occupants were very much tied into that field of consciousness. So one of the problems that we're having with science right now is that everyone's sort of stuck in the flat earth society, because no one's caught up to the 50s yet, classified technologies. And so when he brought this out, people went, gosh, well, that's what Dr. Greer had been saying for 35 years. And but I knew it was operational. I mean, remember, there are a lot of people on my team who are they're former CIA remote view folks, and there was a 30-year program where the CIA used people like Ingo Swann, who's passed away, a great guy, who would use consciousness to spy on the Soviet Union or image something out in space, and they were actually incredibly accurate. So I think that's one of the things when you go from an understanding of the science of consciousness into applied physics, let's call it, with communication, but also targeting these objects. That's the really spooky end of it. That's very upsetting when people unpack the fact that it's not science fiction and it's real.
Well, one of the things that Jake mentioned is that he was actually able to control this this ship with his mind using psionics, and he talked about how it differed based on the situation. Like there's a whole fight or flight aspect to how well he could control it. Do you understand that part? And can you explain it?
Well, what he was referring to, I don't think it was referring to him being the operator, but the ones that are P3 operators. So let's get clear on that, number one. And that the P3 operators are put into a training program. It's rather brutal, but it does involve drugs, dopamine, electromagnetic systems. A great many of them end up in a coma or end up dying. It's very brutal. But one of the stimulants that heightens your awareness is in a moment if they can induce a heightened state, situational awareness, like the whole fight or flight dynamic. Now, certainly in a meditative state, you don't need that to get to a higher state. But remember, this is the mindset of a military program. Boom, get it done, right? So it's hardly the integrative program of a meditative training like I teach. But it's like, get her done by any means. And so if some people get killed being experimental guinea pigs in this, too bad, it's collateral damage. So he's talking about how when you're in a moment where you're in a fight or flight situation, all your senses and your consciousness gets very focused, right? So it's an augmentation process that can be induced. And of course, I don't recommend it. It's a terrible thing to do to fellow human beings, in my opinion. But that is why. So there are many pathways to getting into that ability, and there are ones, some of which are very positive and a great experience for everyone, and some of which are brutal, which you would expect a hardcore military program run by sociopaths that just want to get something done, right? And hey, if there's collateral damage and people get killed or injured or commit suicide or whatever, who cares, right? It's sort of like when the head of the Army intelligence guy, General Stubblebine, took his boys through some training programs for consciousness and being a remote view. And a huge percentage of them committed suicide and started doing drugs and became alcoholics and had mental breakdowns because they weren't doing it in an integrated way where they were unfolding naturally within. It was a very technologically oriented, brutal, get-it-done way. So you can get that result, right? I mean, if the goal is by any means necessary, get this done, right? You can do it, but look at the human cost. So I tell people this is not wise, nor is it humane, but that is an accurate description, what he said, of what they were doing. I have more information on those programs, and we have other people who've been operators in them. It's even the way they recruit and bring the people in. This is the part where, the whistleblower, Michael Herrera, who saw that operation in Indonesia, is this huge 300-foot diameter octagonal craft. And underneath it was a platform, and there were crates. And he initially, when we last did our interview, I just was getting ready to do the National Press Club event about a year and a half ago. And Michael Herrera didn't know that in those crates were humans being moved around. He thought it was drugs or something. But there were little portable oxygen and HVAC units on it. And so those people were people who were going to either die or starve to death after that tsunami in Indonesia in 2009. And they said, hey, they went up, these special operations guys went up and said, look, you can either stay here and die or you can come with us. And you'll live for now. And then they would move them into these operations and screen them to be P3 operators. And the P3 operators, the psionic operators, most of those people didn't pass the testing, but the ones who did then went into this more brutal program. The ones who didn't would work in stiffs, subterranean facilities or underground bases, cooking and cleaning and doing other things. So it's a rather disturbing, operation from start to finish. Although once they're there in custody, let's say, they're apparently treated quite well. But of course, it's like an indentured servitude in my mind. I mean, people can put whatever lipstick on that pig. To me, it's trafficking in desperate people and then using them for your own devices.